Hello everybody, my name is Zen, and I entered a Warhammer painting competition, and I won. But before we get to talking about the painting competition, I just need to get some things out of the way first. So first and foremost, if you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. You may not be coming to this channel for the same reasons that normal people do, because for the last 13 years, I've been doing video game coverage on this channel, and I plan on continuing to do that. However, I am also really interested in tabletop gaming, including wargaming and painting of miniatures, as you know from clicking on this video. But this is not my normal type of video, and if you're one of my regular viewers, we're going to talk about some cool stuff like persevering in spite of really bad things going on. We're going to talk about how you can get better at doing things and just, continuously improving. And all of that stuff is relevant to both the tabletop hobby and video games, and I think that it creates an interesting bridge between the two. And I generally feel like on YouTube that I am pulled in two different directions. I love wargaming so very much. I play so much of it. And then on the other hand, I love video games so very much, and I do a lot of gaming stuff on the channel. But it's hard to bridge those two. It's hard to bring those two different communities together, even though generally speaking, a lot of the things that we're both interested in are crossover stuff, such as Warhammer, because Warhammer has both video games and tabletop games now. They're mainly known for tabletop stuff, but the video games are pretty good, and you may have clicked on this video because you're recently interested in games such as Space Marine 2, which is a fantastic game, and I've done an impressions video on the channel. I'll link it below so you can check it out if you're interested in my thoughts on that particular game and how it is very faithful to the source material. However, we're going to talk about painting today. Throughout the video, I'm going to be splicing in both pictures from the competition piece that I submitted and the footage from Space Marine 2, because again, we're trying to bridge it, right? And I think that that's a pretty fair thing to do. And of course, I'm going to put pictures of my army right at the beginning of this video, because if I don't, I'm going to get comments. It's always the same if I don't do this. I'm going to get comments at the beginning of people who haven't watched more than a couple minutes through, and they'll be like, oh, you talk about painting, you haven't even showed the army. And it's just, look, I'm not going to tease you, right? I'm going to show a little bit of it right off the start, but we're going to splice in both pictures and gameplay footage throughout. But with that out of the way, let's jump on in, right? I did submit a pretty large army for Armies on Parade, which is a yearly painting competition that Games Workshop, the owners of Warhammer, do for the miniature side of things. Because people, when you play, Warhammer, whether it's the Old World or 40K or Age of Sigmar or even things like Kill Team or Warcry and smaller games like that, you are painting up armies of dudes. The smaller games, it's a lot less than that, but 40K, which is what you're saying this entry is for, and Age of Sigmar, you got a lot of minis that you're painting, and depending on the army that you're playing, you've got even more. Skaven, for instance, the little rat people, you can run so many minis if you wanted to. And on the 40K side, Tyranids, which if you've played Space Marine 2, you know this, they can definitely play as a swarming army, and it's a lot of fun to do that. But it just means that when you're submitting these things, there's a bunch of minis. And this Armies on Parade doesn't focus on individual minis that are being painted necessarily, but they're taking it in as a whole. Like, how is this army painted as a whole? Because there are things that you have to, compromise on when you're painting an entire army versus a single model. The single model competition is called Golden Demon. That happens a couple times throughout the year generally. Usually once somewhere in the European area or the UK, and then once in the US. That hasn't always been the case, but that is currently how it is working this year and in more recent previous years. And if you're painting for Golden Demon, you're putting hundreds of hours potentially into a single piece, and the payoff is massive. You're getting these just absolute works of art. But when you're painting for an army, you're not just painting one guy. You can't just put hundreds of hours into one thing because you need to get the army done eventually. If you do that for you know, a bunch of models, you're going to take so long that, you know, if you manage to do that, yeah, you're going to have a really excellent looking army, but at what cost? You'll be a husk of a person by the end of it, because army painting is a unique skill to develop and it's very hard to do. So that leads me into talking about a little who I am as a painter and as a war gamer and as a video gamer. And again, if you're new to the channel, you don't know this, and that's totally fine. If you're on the channel frequently, you may have heard me talk about this, but I run my own business outside of YouTube. Back in 2021, I started my own 3D printing business where I do 3D printing and I sell it on Etsy. And it's just like, you know, D&D models are generally what people are buying, but people buy a bunch of stuff for proxies, for Warhammer, because they don't want to buy the main models that come directly from Games Workshop for various reasons, or just for, you know, other games as well. But I also do commission painting, where I paint up people's stuff. And I've gotten pretty good at it. Like, this is not a boasting thing, but it's just a reality of the situation. I can see where I'm at versus my peers in the space. And I know I've gotten quite good, and I can see the improvement versus the very first mini I did now. And it is a huge philosophy of mine. And I've talked about this briefly on the channel before, where I think that every single time I do something, I want to become just 1% better at it. Just 1% better. It doesn't have to be massive gains. Sometimes you do have massive gains. You can look back and go, wow, I got a lot better at this thing. You know, if we're talking about video games, you can look at games like Elden Ring. I think this is a good example. You go into a boss fight, you're expecting to die, right? You're expecting to not be super great at it. But you slowly learn the fight. You get a little bit better each time that you do die. And eventually you master it and you go in and you defeat it. And it just feels so good. And that is how I treat everything in life, whether it be video games or wargaming or miniature painting or being a father. Every single thing, I just try to get a little bit better at it every single time. And this is a philosophy I picked up from Todd McFarlane, who is the creator of Spawn, or at least the Spawn comic and McFarlane toys and a bunch of stuff like that. You probably have heard of him. I've heard him speak that in an interview before, and it just like resonated with me and it's stuck with me ever since. So that is just, it's a philosophy that I use, and I take that definitely into miniature painting. I started back in 2017, and now we're in 2024. We're towards the end of 2024, and I've been painting for that long, and I have gotten a lot better, and especially since I started commission painting. Once there's pressure on you to try and complete something to an excellent level, especially when money is involved, you tend to get pretty good at it. Those of you who work in the trades like construction or remodeling and stuff like that, you know what I'm talking about, right? Because if you have a job that someone is paying a lot of money for, you want to make sure you get it right, or at least if you're a reasonable person, you want to get it right. And that's just my philosophy that I take into all of my work. So leading up to this particular competition this year, I had been working with somebody who I've done commissions for Star Wars Legion in the past, and Shatterpoint, and a couple other things. And he's a friend of mine, but he's also a client. You know, we play games and we're very friendly and we chat for hours on end, but we also have a working relationship where he's like, he trusts me implicitly with painting his stuff. He knows that I'm a great painter, and 99% of the time he's just like, take whatever time you need, just make it awesome. Just like, I don't even like his feedback on what he wants it painted like is generally pretty light. He's got some little things here and there. He's like, I kind of want this color incorporated into it. And he gives me very great amounts of freedom in how I paint, because he knows that I can be artistic and I can use that creative freedom to make something excellent. And he is actually the reason why I changed my pricing method. I used to just do a flat price, like, hey, for this job, I'm going to charge this amount. But what I found was that I was undercosting myself an immense amount, where I was putting in significantly more work than I should be, where if you counted the amount of hours versus how much I was being paid, it was getting down to like $3 an hour. And that's bad, right? You don't want to do that. And I'm a fast painter too. I'm extremely fast now, and it's just that was not it was not cost effective. So I changed my pricing model, and all of my clients were in agreement with it. They said that yes, that this is exactly what you should do. Which now I charge $25 an hour to paint. And if someone's like, I have a budget, I don't want to go over this cap, it's like, cool, then you're going to get, not my best work, but I'm going to give it to you so it still looks really cool. It's still going to look great on the table and still going to blow things out of the water compared to everybody else. And 99% of the time, that is exactly what happens. I don't think I've actually had a moment where I showed up with something that was only half done and it wasn't the best thing on the tables. Which, again, I'm not trying to boast. I'm just like giving you perspective. I put a lot of time and effort into learning these things, into researching these things, and into practicing these things. And I think that if you, as either a painter, a hobbyist, a person who's playing video games, if you take that mindset, this will help you in everything. I used to take this exact mindset, which is nice because I've put it into my business since. And I use this in competitive raiding for World of Warcraft, which is like a weird, throw out on that one. But it's true. We had an incredibly competitive raid team. We were competing for not only server first, but upwards of like in the top 100 of guilds in the world. And the reason I was able to do that is because I had this mindset. You gotta just get better every time. And, no slouching necessarily. Like the times suck sometimes. And you're not going to improve in those times, and you just got to let it go. But the times that you can improve and that you're capable of doing so, you're putting that time in and you're practicing and you're researching, and you're getting muscle memory and whatnot. And that really, really helps in improving. And one key component about my painting that I have massively improved on, that I've put the time and the hours and the practice into, is the airbrush, and it has incredibly sped up my painting times. I can base coat an entire model with my airbrush. Now I do have a nice airbrush, right? I can buy something that is expensive and use it very nicely because it's my business. I have funds coming in that can pay for that kind of thing, right? But I can base coat an entire model, especially a Space Marine, like you're seeing in the background, with the airbrush completely. And that's maybe a couple minutes a model, because I'm not, especially when I'm batch painting, a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen models, the least amount of time or the less amount of time that I'm sitting there swapping paints out in the airbrush, the more time that I'm saving per individual model, and being able to batch do everything saves time per model, and that saves people money per model as well that they end up spending. And that's my thing, is I have to balance time and money. I don't want to sit there painting somebody's stuff for hours and hours on end because I have my own armies I want to paint. So I'm trying to get these things out the door as quickly as possible to move on to the next thing, because I'm booked out several months in advance right now. I've got many things just sitting on my desk and in my closet of stuff that is in queue to paint for other people. So I need to get these things done as quickly as possible. And I've had to adapt my styles to shortcutting things, not making things less of a quality, of a high quality, but just cutting steps down that are redundant or unnecessary, or being able to just shave seconds off of individual tasks that build up quite a lot of time over the course of an entire army. But going back to the beginning of this year, my friend, he said that, hey, I want a Black Templar's army. I got him into 40k, which was a fun process of trying to convince him to play. It didn't really take much. And when he bought in, he literally bought completely in. He bought an entire army, and then some off of eBay. He was just like, I want these models in this army, and I don't even know if they're good, but these are the ones that I want. And then after that, he started piecing together what would be a competitive army. And he is a competitive player, so he has a good game sense for that. So he started buying all these models, and I started doing them one at a time. And the first main purchase he got were the Sword Brethren for the Black Templars, which are really cool models. And I did 15 of them, so 3 full units of them, and got those done. And it set the theme completely for the rest of the army. But then I was kind of going back and forth on some of his stuff and another one of my clients' stuff, and his army just wasn't getting done as quickly as I would have liked it. And I've changed my policy since then, where I'm just painting all of one person's stuff, get it done so that they can go and enjoy that army and go play with it, while I move on to somebody else's stuff. And when they're ready to come back for more, then we can move on to the next thing or add more to their current army. But I had gotten the Sword Brethren done, and I had gotten a couple of the heroes done and a vehicle done, and then I got some pretty bad news, which was that my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And as a creative person, the only way that I can describe that experience is it's like a creativity vortex. It just sucks it away from you, and you don't feel like doing anything. And so for the last 6 months, I've been struggling with that really heavily. The feeling of I don't want to do anything, and I'm forcing myself to do this, and it's not fun or enjoyable, and I'm not growing, right? I'm not learning, because as we said earlier, you need to be in a spot where you're open to learning. Even though I'm sitting there doing all the research and I'm watching a bunch of videos. I think the most amount of videos that I watch on YouTube are painting related, and I'm gathering all this information. I'm taking it in, but my ability to apply it is like hamstrung. I'm having an issue doing that, and it got to the point where my dad started quickly going downhill, and we knew that maybe he wouldn't make it the rest of the year. And that's when Games Workshop announced the actual submission dates for Armies on Parade. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do it for him. I'm going to do it for my dad. So I'm going to get this army done. I let my friend know. I was like, yo, I'm going to finish your army for Armies on Parade. It's my intention to submit for it and to try to win it, for my dad. To be like, yo, thank you for supporting me with just years and years and years of support, of letting me do weird hobbies or just anything that I wanted to do. My dad was always really supportive of, and he would tell me when I was doing something stupid, sure, but when it was something like mini painting and getting into that, he was insanely supportive, and I was so thankful for that. So I was like, I'm gonna win this for him, and I set that as a goal. I let the guy know that his stuff is going to get painted for this, and I started working on it. I got some stuff built up, basically the final part of his army, and he had finished building the rest of it as well, and brought it all over to me and dropped it off. And that's when things went from bad to worse. In the last week of August, my dad had just an excellent weekend where he had a bunch of friends over. He was in hospice care. He was deciding not to continue treatments because they weren't doing anything, and that really sucked. But he had a great day. He had a bunch of energy, and he had people over, and he was able to interact with them and have a good time. And the day after that, something happened where he just had to go to the hospital. Basically, he was coughing up a lung, and he just couldn't clear phlegm properly, so they had to take him in, and they put him on some medication. He went home, and that was the start of the downturn. And it was September 4th that he passed. And so he passed at home, with his wife there. We had visited him every single day leading up to that. And we got the call that evening that he had passed, and that was it. And honestly, that was also it with all of my motivation. Now, one thing, if you're new, you don't know about me, is that I have been doing YouTube for 13 years, but in those 13 years, I have uploaded a video every single day, and I've never missed a day. It's a weird thing to boast about. It is just a thing that I am happy that I've been able to keep up this, upload streak. And I had been preparing for this as a possibility of him passing sooner rather than later for some time. So I was prepared for that in a way. And I just turned everything off. Turned off the Etsy shop. I turned off YouTube. I had videos that were uploaded and ready to go. And so I was releasing those for 2 weeks. And for 2 weeks, I did nothing. Literally nothing. I basically sat around and put my head into whatever hole I could find it. In this case, it was a lot of just building random models. And I have the best freaking friends. One of the guys that I was doing the commission for, the guy that this army's commission is for, and one of our other good friends who I do commission painting for, bought me a couple boxes of models. They bought me the Old World Tomb King box, which is a massive box, and a Sisters of Army army box, or Sisters of Battle army box, which I play Sisters of Battle in 40K, so that's my main army. And so they just bought me this stuff to be like, yo, we understand you're going through this thing. Here's this stuff, just go build models. You know what? I did that for like a solid week. I was completely distant, and I had absolutely zero motivation to do anything. That vortex turned into a black hole. My creativity was gone. But I had promised myself that I was going to submit this army as a competition piece for my dad. And it turned from doing it for him to show him that I could win it, to doing it for him in his memory. And that was a really hard thing to do. That was a really hard thing to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get it done. And I knew that the submission date for my local store, which is in Jacksonville, Florida, Jacksonville's massive, by the way, in case you didn't know. I knew that the submission date was for like the 27th. It was for late September, and I had spent 2 weeks doing nothing. So I suddenly had a huge amount of work to get done in order to submit it and be done with it. And I'll tell you what, I worked on it all the way up until the point of submission. I had the point where my sister was coming out for the memorial, and in order to go pick her up, which she was delayed because of Hurricane Helene, or whatever the stupid name of the hurricane was that came through. Her flight had been canceled, and she had to come in the next morning and everything. And I picked her up, and I brought her back to the house, and I immediately started painting again. I had been painting all day long, multiple days in a row, and over the course of just over a week, I put 77 hours into painting. I completely dove in and just buried myself in work. And I got it done. And I got it done mostly because there was one tank I didn't get done in time for the physical, in-person competition, but I have gotten it done for the online portion, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I got everything together after I had finished. I just like drove the 40 minutes over to the Warhammer store. That's my local store. I know 40 minutes sounds like a long ways away, but again, Jacksonville is massive, so that's just how it is here. So I drove there, dropped it off that evening, an hour before they closed, because they were going to be doing the display of everything the next day. And so I wanted it there basically all day long. They were doing voting by members who were coming into the store, as opposed to having like a voting committee. And there was a whole thing with that. It was fine. It's not like a bad thing. It was just how they did it. I had to make sure that my army needed to be there the day before in order to garner the most amount of votes. And you know what? That was the right move, but it also didn't really matter, as it turned out. So I had dropped it off. There were 2 other submissions already there when I dropped off. Everybody else dropped off in the morning of that Saturday morning, and I had no idea what was there. I was so nervous. I had no idea what people had dropped off. So what I did is I had the guy who I did the commission for, he literally lives like right down the street. So he went over in the morning to check it out. He was like, he didn't want to like change my thoughts on the competition at all. So he just took a couple pictures and sent it to me, and they were crappy phone pictures, and I couldn't get a read on how good these painted things were. And from the phone pictures, they actually looked really good. And so I was nervous the rest of the day until that evening. So voting was going to close at 5, and then they were going to announce it by 6. So we went over there at like 4:45 with me and the fam. They were going to vote. I told them to just vote for what they thought was the best. I wasn't trying to like sway the vote at all. And the store owner also said that one of the things, there was an asterisk on like the allowing people to vote for what's your favorite one, which is that if if it happened that the one who won was not the best painted one, right? If someone brought in like 80 of their friends to vote all for their one thing, and it was clearly not the best painted thing, he was gonna make a veto and just be like, no, that's not the best painted one. And that makes total sense with how they were doing it. But we went in like 25 to 15 minutes before voting closed. We voted, and then we went and had dinner. And while I was sitting down eating some Chick-fil-A with the fam, they were like, oh, how are you feeling after that? And I was like, you know what? I am super confident now because I saw what everybody else's was, and they were good. They were really good. There were some that I voted very high, and I was really happy with what everybody did. But I was like, I just feel like mine feels like it has a lot more time put into it. Not that it's not that anybody else is like worse or better painted. It's just like I feel like you can see the time put into mine and where the quality gets boosted by that versus what the other armies there were. So I was like, I'm feeling pretty confident. And sure enough, we went over and they announced the winners, and I won by a massive margin, which is both humbling and also terrifying, because it's like, well, I don't feel like, because I have seen some other people's submissions for the online portion of Armies on Parade, which again, we'll talk about that in a moment. And I'm like, I don't think this is better than theirs. So like, how much better are these other armies than what this one is? It makes me really nervous for that portion of the competition. But I got my gold medal. I got my participation pin, which is whatever, but the gold medal is awesome. It's really thick. If you threw it, you could kill somebody with it. And it's super high quality. I'm really happy with that. I'm happy that I won, and I'm happy I did it for my dad, because again, I did it in his memory of like, hey, thank you for supporting me throughout my entire life with all this stuff, and for teaching me how to have this kind of work ethic and to be able to get this kind of thing done in such a short amount of time. That all comes from him, and I'm very thankful for that. And I did it in his memory. And when we got back out to the car afterwards, I just was like crying, just heavily crying, which I'm sure you would totally understand. But that was a big moment. It was very difficult for me, but it is only half the story, because when it comes to the online portion of it, which ends pretty soon here, I think it's sometime early October. I don't know when it ends. I just knew that I had everything done, so I just needed to get the picture submitted and just be done with it, which is what I did today. It ends, and then they come to their conclusion early November. But I'm super nervous for that, because I have shown painters that I highly respect this army, and they're very high on it. They're like, wow, this is incredible. It's really clean. It's really well done. It just nothing but praise. And the constructive criticisms are stuff that I already knew, stuff that I'm already looking at going like, oh man, I wish I could have had more time to, to get that better and whatnot. And they see the thing that I see, because they have the same eyes that I do as far as like where the quality level is at on this and how to push it further. And I'm really respectful of that, and I love that. So I'm very nervous going into the online portion of it. Do I get really anything for winning the online portion of it other than praise? Not really. There's a trophy and a box of minis that I can get, but that's kind of not the point, right? It all goes back to, again, doing it for my dad, and I wish so hard that I could win, but I don't feel like I'm going to. And isn't it funny? And this is part of the reason why I wanted to make this video. It seems like why this video gamer guy who does gaming stuff on the channel is making a mini painting video. Why? But it comes down to, there's a strange dichotomy in every single one of us where we can be absolutely so confident in something, and the moment you measure us up to people who are our peers or better, we just fall apart. What is with that? I don't like that about myself, and I know other people don't either. Now, at this point, I won't know if I even place or get a accommodation or anything until November. So if I do, keep your eyes on warhammer-community.com, I guess, which they have a new site and it sucks, but keep your eyes on that. early November and see when they announce the winners. And if I'm in there, if you see this army in there, then you know there's going to be a follow-up video to this one. If not, then maybe there'll be a follow-up video. I don't know. But the point is, I put so much time into this project. This project took 172 hours total, if you include all of the painting. And that means that at $25 an hour, that's $4,300 that my client paid for, my friend paid for. And he did this army because he was really passionate about it and he really loved it. And now he has, and I jokefully boast, he has this award-winning army that he gets to go play games with. And it just looks so good on the tabletop. It blows everything else out of the water in our area, and it's just awesome. And I'm so proud of getting it done and winning the local competition for my dad. I desperately want to win the online one, but I don't think I'm going to. And that's totally fine, actually. It's one of those things you got to have a conclusion on. Like, it's fine that I don't win because I'm not doing it for the award. I'm not doing it for the trophy. I'm not doing it for the recognition. I'm just doing it for my dad. And honestly, I've already done it. I've already shown that I've done it. Not in the local competition of winning it, whatever. I got the thing done. And that is what mattered. Not the competition or anything else. It was just the fact that I got it done and showed that I could get it done and did it in his memory. That is the most important part. And in addition to that, this has been such a huge learning experience. I've learned so much on this one project. I put 172 hours into perfecting something. You're damn right. If you put 172 hours into anything and you're doing it trying to get better and trying to perfect something, you are going to have a massive impact on how good you are at something. And I want to encourage all of you guys to do the same. Whether it be video games or tabletop games or knitting or anything like that. Just put the time into something, do the research, get invested in something that you really care about, whether it be a hobby or just a passion of yours, and enjoy the process of learning and getting better at something. Because when you take that journey, you start at the bottom of a mountain and you slowly climb your way up, and sometimes you fall down sometimes, and you get yourself back up and you continue to climb. And by the time you get to the top of that peak, you can look back down at the path that you took and you go, wow, like this is an excellent view from up here. I can look back in retrospect and see what it took to get here. And I know how hard it was to do this at times. And oh, there's a mountain over there. There's another thing I can go do. There's another thing I can get better at, either in this one thing that I'm working on or something else. And you get to go do it again. You get to continually improve yourself and just feel like you're getting better, no matter what it is. Again, hobbies, gaming, whatnot. I'm so happy with this painting project. My next steps are to obviously try and win the online part of it. We'll see. I've submitted. Now it's just a waiting game, which is the worst because you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, anxious all the time of how it's going to turn out. And then after that, I'm going to seriously put a heavy effort into doing Golden Demon. I'm going to put a bunch of time and effort into one piece, into making it perfect and submitting it and trying not to win. That's the lesson that I've learned here. Winning is fun. Winning is great. I'm a hyper-competitive person. I'm so competitive, in fact, that sometimes when I don't even feel like there's a chance of winning, I won't even compete at all. That's where I'm at. You competitive people out there, you know what I'm talking about. This is not that thing anymore to me. This is bigger than that. This is about showing and proving to myself that the time and effort and passion that my dad put into me, that I could take that same thing and put it into everything else around me. My family, my hobbies, my everything. So I don't want to win Golden Demon necessarily. It would be great. I would love to. But I want to do it for myself. I want to prove to myself that I can do it and get it done. And if I don't win, come back again, improve, try again until I do. I hope you guys enjoyed this very different kind of video from me. It is something that I've had on my mind for over a week now, and I've just been dying to get it out. In fact, in some cases, that has been the case because I have this sinus infection that I'm not sure you guys have been able to hear throughout this video because I've just tried to clear everything out of my nose, and I've been coughing in between recording lines here. It's been really bad. I've struggled through it, but I got through to the end. But if you've enjoyed it, let me know in the comments what you guys thought about it. Let me know your stories of improvement, your stories of how you were able to prepare and better yourself as a person in any kind of walk of life. And if you want to see more of my videos, of course, make sure to subscribe. As I said earlier, I upload daily. I've never missed a day. I don't plan on missing a day anytime soon. You never know, though. It obviously can happen at any point. Like if I just get in a car accident or something and I don't have a video uploaded, that would be terrible. Let's hope that doesn't happen. And if you want to help support the channel, you can become a channel member by hitting the join button down below. That really does help keep the lights on. It is additional income to what I do for work through the Etsy shop and through commission painting, and it helps relieve some of that stress of having to paint all the time and having to do all this stuff for other people, because it frees us to have a little bit of extra breathing room with the YouTube money. But with all of that being said, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this video, watch it, and comment, reply, and all that. And we shall see you all next time.